Everybody. Now it is my great pleasure to introduce to you our guest speaker tonight. Melanie Kurdys is from Plainwell, Michigan, and she's a huge advocate for parents, kids, excellent teachers, and a volunteer math tutor for 15 years. She's been a board member of the Great Start Collaborative of Kalamazoo County since 2009 and the Michigan Conservative Education Task Force. She's 2013 Vice Chair of the Kalamazoo Republican Party, 2013 President, Van Cal Tea Party, 2007 to 2011 Portage Public School Board Trustee, VP, and 15 years in information systems industry, retired as Director, IS Owens Corning Fiberglass. In 1977, she attained her BS from the University of Michigan in mathematics. She's married to her husband Greg for 33 years, 3 grown children, Dan and Amanda. And with 3 grown children, Dan and Amanda, with 1 on the way, Christine and Angela. I'm going to let you fix that for me, Melanie. You can tell them about that part, because I wrote that down all wrong. Anyways, as many of you will probably remember, she was one of the 2 elected State Board of Education candidates, her and Todd Corser, in September of 2012. So it's my pleasure to introduce to you Melanie Kurdys. Welcome.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Yes, it was my good fortune to not win that election to the State Board of Ed, because if any of you who know about being on a board, it kind of restricts your ability to speak publicly. It never did mine, which was a downfall to my effectiveness on the board. So not being on the board is actually better for me. Clarification, let's see, I've been married 35 years. I need to update that. And Dan and Amanda, Dan is my son, Amanda is my daughter-in-law, and they're expecting our first grandbaby first part of March, so I'm really excited about that. I've told them I'll be happy to homeschool if they want help. Your project on keeping the youth involved in doing constitutional education is really, really a good project. One of the big reasons we don't have young people involved is because they don't know. They don't understand. They weren't taught in school, and that's the current 20-somethings. So it's getting even worse for those who are in school now. If any of you have been following the new AP History course, that is the Advanced Placement History course that's available for our high-achieving students in high school, the standards are horrible. The material is horrible. It has taken away the information about our founding to make it minuscule. The references to Ronald Reagan are embarrassing. I think Rand Paul made a few comments about that. It's just deplorable, and this is what they're teaching our advanced students in high school. The other point I wanted to make is about the funding for roads. One of the things that just came out today that they're promising no cuts to school spending. And this whole package of bills will probably increase the amount of money schools get. Schools have more than enough money. I have another presentation on the financial position of schools, but let me just tell you, there's a website, usgovernmentspending.com. It's all one word, usgovernmentspending.com. It's the only place I was able to find a consolidation of federal, state, and local spending. Because school spending comes from all of those sources now. And it consolidates it, and one of the things you'll see is in the last 25 years, the United States has spent more on education than on defense. Every single year. And yet we've been at war. And what are the outcomes of our education as a result of that? And I'm telling you, the reason we have so much trouble in our education system, one of the big ones, is there is far too much money. And charlatans and shysters show up with new, unproven ideas and convince people to get involved and spend the money. And the pressure on our school districts now to pay to conform to Common Core is unbelievable. The spending is so under the covers. The Department of Ed, Michigan Department of Ed, wouldn't even admit what it will cost our local districts because they said it wasn't their job to worry about that. The local communities would take care of that. So I don't even go into, I wasn't planning on going into the money, but I just thought that was something that you really need to know. It is politically inappropriate to suggest that schools have more than enough money, but believe me, it is true. And we really need to pare down what they've got. Okay, so we're changing our focus. We have been Stop Common Core. We're going to continue to be Stop Common Core. But Stop Common Core, first of all, it sounds negative. Stop doing that. You have to have a positive kind of statement to be more constructive. But the problem is that even if we are effective at stopping Common Core, we may not be effective at stopping progressive education. And that is the battle we have to fight and win. Stop Common Core is just a very important piece and the most current effort, but it is just one piece. I have a handout out in the front that compares progressive education to classical education. And I think a lot of you will see that we have moved away from classical education, which was the proven methods and strategies for teaching children for years, many, many years. And starting in the 60s, this infiltration of progressive ideas into education has overtaken the system. And one of the key reasons why we're going to have a really hard time at really turning this around is because most of our educators are progressive thinkers, and they think this is the right way to teach kids. Our schools of education reinforce that, so that the schools of education are regulated by the state in terms of what they have to teach teachers, which doesn't include things like how to teach elementary kids to learn how to multiply. It doesn't teach how to use phonics to teach kids to read. It teaches classroom behavior and socialization. And these, I don't know how many of you know, Hillsdale College actually had a school of education that they closed, I think 2 years ago now. And the reason they closed it is because, according to the state ranking, they were one of the lowest achieving schools of education. Now, who in the world in their right mind would believe that's possible? But they got this ranking because of the criteria that the state was using to judge them on. For example, how many minority students do you enroll? How many minority teachers do you employ? Well, Hillsdale has never tracked any employee or student by their race, so they couldn't answer the question. So regardless of what the mix is, they couldn't answer the question, they got a 0. So there's a whole series of issues about what the state was looking for that were irrelevant. And yet, so their school, they closed their school. Now, they will encourage people to go there if you want to learn to be a teacher, and they'll get you the courses partnering with someone else. But they are no longer an accredited school of education. So this is a big war. We're changing our framework, adding the bigger picture of freedom to learn. So first of all, let me remind you, I hope everybody has a handout to follow with me. The very most important thing you should need to remember is to encourage everyone you know to opt out. Opt out of the state assessments. Michigan's assessments are going to be coming up this spring for everybody from grades 3 to 8 and 11th grade. They may be doing some of the first and second graders to get them practice. I've heard even the 9th graders are getting practice. So parents should opt out of this test. There's a form out front. It's developed by the Thomas More Law Firm. This is their website for people who want to go on there and learn more about it. But it was research based on Michigan law. It is solid. The parents sign it and they turn it in and they ask at the desk for the receptionist to sign it as received. If the receptionist refuses to sign it, I tell parents take 2 signed copies. You sign 1 copy and say they received it but refused to sign it, and you leave it with them and say this needs to go in. You need to inform the teachers, and it goes in the file. And then you take 1 home. And every discussion you have, every correspondence you have, you record and document. There is no obligation for the school to agree. They must comply because you said so. There is no obligation for you to explain. No explanation is necessary. The lawyers recommend don't offer one. Just say, it doesn't matter why, this is my direction to you, I expect you will comply. And any email you get from them, anything you'd keep track of. Now, the one incident we had where a parent found out that the teachers were away on professional development on test day. So the substitute teachers were administering the test. And oops, they forgot to tell the substitute teacher which kids opted out. So we also have little bracelets out front, as if for $1 for the kids to wear. My parent might opt out, that Common Core opt out. So to remind the kids and to remind the teachers who is opting out. This is a very, very, very important campaign. It's a grassroots effort. Some states have been making great progress. The people in control are panicking because they know that we can stop this. The grassroots can stop this if we refuse to cooperate. So this is a really important campaign, number one. Okay, now let's talk about freedom to learn. We're looking to try to establish a nonpartisan vision because I honestly believe that progressive ed is more about an elitist group of people who are both Democrats and Republicans who think they know better than parents and teachers. And they think that if they tell us, they come up with these models, that it will be better. And I tell you, people who upset me the most are people like Mike Huckabee. Mike Huckabee is insisting that he does not support federalization of education or data collection or anything else, but he still supports Common Core standards. But the fact of the matter is the Common Core standards are not effective means to teach children. They are, at the core, bad education. And yet he continues to support it. He says, well, it's gotten a bad name, we should give it a new name. States shouldn't walk away from it before we've had a chance to prove it. Yes, we must. We know that it's the wrong way to teach. So what we think that we've got teachers now who are stepping up to the plate because they see what's happening to the students. They're feeling the pressure of having to accommodate and restructure their entire delivery of their curriculum because of these standards and because of the assessments. So we had a panel at the powwow in January. There were 7 people on the panel. I was the moderator. One was a teacher, one's a retired teacher, one's he's a business owner of one of the charter schools, a board member, one of the people who helps charter schools. And I gave them 5 minutes to explain what they saw as a vision to learn. We just posted it on YouTube today. If you're interested, we'll have it on our Facebook. But then we summarized to say, okay, what are the areas of agreement? And we came up with 4 solid areas of agreement in that hour. And they are these, and I'll just describe them a little bit because I want this to be a dialogue too. So what I'm going to do after I go through these areas of agreement, I want to ask you if you have any questions, and then I want to do a show of hands vote to say, do you agree with these as a positive vision to learn in Michigan? So first, the best educational curriculum has the active support of local parents and teachers. That is when new ideas come into the organization, okay, fine, but that has the active support of the parents and the teachers in that school, and they have a chance to see it and speak up before it's accommodated. Standards and curriculum should be evidence-based. Educators are big on using the terms research-based, and this is really important for you to understand. Words matter, okay? Research-based means some professor somewhere had an idea, and so he looked around, read it from some books, maybe ran a test on a kid or 2. That's research-based. Evidence-based is where you actually have a practice that has been used in a robust manner with a control group and a test group, and you have results that demonstrate this process works and this process better than this one, for example. There is none of that in this new math where we teach kids how to multiply 3 ways and write a paragraph. There is no evidence that that teaches kids how to do The new geometry that they have with Common Core, the transformational geometry, that replaced the traditional Euclidean geometry that all of us were educated in. It's a brand new way of teaching. There is no evidence anywhere that it is an effective way to teach geometry. So we're saying good standards in the curriculum must be evidence-based. High-stakes testing is bad for kids and teachers and should be eliminated. So last year, our representative Amanda Price, I like her a lot, she's a good representative, introduced a bill to fail third graders who can't read. And I told her, I said, the problem is you just introduced Common Core standards. Common Core standards will not successfully teach the majority of our children to read, even though they're in school on a regular basis from kindergarten through the third grade. And you have no proof that it will, because it does not emphasize phonics as the primary way to learn to read, which is the proven method. And I said, so you already have 35% of third graders in the state of Michigan who can't read at the grade level. So then let's talk about the logistics. Let's assume it stays the same. 35% of the third graders are failed. So now the number of kids who go to fourth grade is 35% less, and the number of kids who are in third grade are 35% more. And the bill said you can fail them for 2 years, regardless of their progress in math, for example. So it was a ridiculous idea, high stakes for kids, with no evidence that that high stakes will make the kids try harder, seriously. It might make the parents panic a little bit, but can you imagine parents who can't read themselves or don't read well trying to struggle with this? Meantime, we let the schools off the hook because they're not using phonics to teach kids to read. So fortunately that died, but that's high stakes testing. Another example would be if you don't pass the MEP or whatever the junior year test is for the state. If you pass every class you take in your school, and you take AP classes, whatever they are, you could still fail and not get your diploma because you didn't pass the state test. That's a high-stakes test. And now the Republicans are on a move to put high-stakes testing in for teachers. Now the argument is it's an accountability. I am all for accountability. But it is unfair and unreasonable to introduce new standards, new curriculum, a new assessment that we have no idea that it has credible results about the test, what was taught in the first place, and hold someone's job, performance rating, and their salary to that, even if it was all good, because it's so proven and brand new. That's not fair. It's unreasonable. This is the wrong way to introduce teacher accountability for student learning. So there's a lot of agreement between parents and teachers in our group that high-stakes testing has to be eliminated. A robust education system is the coexistence of strong public and private schools. So the idea is you need a choice market. You need options for parents to pick from, and the public schools should be part of the game. Now, to be perfectly honest, I think there's a very strong force behind charter schools that would love nothing more than to shut down the public education the way it stands now. They really think that it cannot be recovered. I'm not on that camp. I don't see how we can or should totally shut down our public school system. There are too many of them that are in the community with a positive relationship. Maybe their outcomes aren't where we want them, but they have a positive relationship with their community. It's detrimental to everybody to have a goal that you're trying to close down public schools and move away from them. But nor should we force private schools or home schools or those other alternatives to conform to what the public school might be required to do, that those are different, that there should be lines there. Okay, so I want to open the floor on these 4 points to see if there are any questions, and then I'm going to ask for a vote on each of them, just a hand vote on whether or not you agree. Okay, questions? Are you going to do the microwave? Okay. She's going to bring a microwave for you to speak. Any questions? Yes.
You mentioned the oh, sorry, I have 6 kids, I don't need a microphone. You mentioned assessment testing, but you didn't mention it for seniors. So when you said that if they failed a test, that they might pass, did I miss that part?
No,
Is there
most
not a test for
most of our seniors do not have. You take the state assessment as a junior.
Okay.
So if you have a senior now, they took the assessment last year, which was the old assessment.
Okay.
So you're okay. Yeah.
In regards to the opting out, I have a senior this year, and I've already been in my mind playing with the idea, okay, I do this opt-out form, how is that going to affect him as a senior? And I haven't sat him down yet to tell him, there might be a problem, Jake, so I'm just forewarning you. But so you're saying there is no test for seniors?
Well, in the opt-out form, you can opt out of data collection. And one of the bills that we're working on with some of the new friendly Republican representatives would be a data bill that actually gives parents permission to demand that the school remove all data records of your student. So if that passes, I mean, it would be good if you submitted the opt-out to data collection from Forward, and then if that passes, that gives you an avenue to get your seniors' data back out of the school system.
Okay, but as far as opt-out forms
For the
tests,
testing,
seniors,
it's right,
there
right.
is none for seniors.
Not-
All right, thank you.
Mhm.
Just a quick clarification question. Standards and curriculum. Every time I hear somebody supporting Common Core, they say, oh, we just set the standards. You set the curriculum. Is that true or not? Because most of the criticism comes from the curriculum and the way things are taught.
Right. Okay, so if you read the standards, standards drive the assessment, which drives the curriculum. So they're all related, and the people who wrote this know that. In the standards, it tells you what kids should know when they should know it. So like, for example, the standards never say the kids should know their multiplication facts 0 to 12, have them memorized and be able to reply. It never says that. And the first time that the students need to know the standard algorithm for multiplication is in 4th grade. Now, traditionally, it's been in 3rd grade. So the question is, what are they spending all that time, K through 3, learning about addition and multiplication? Well, they're teaching, the standards say kids need to know multiple methods to solve problems. Kids need to be able to explain their answer. That's in the standards. So that drives then the curriculum. So a teacher who has taught traditional strategy, and that is you teach the rote, everybody memorizes their 0 to 12 multiplication facts, and then we teach you the multi-digit multiplication standard algorithm. If you struggle with that, we got some other ideas in the bag, but you know how to do that and you get the right answer, you're all set. So what happened then in the assessment, back in the traditional assessment, if you wanted to test if a kid knew how to multiply, you'd give them 20 questions. They'd multiply them, and you'd mark how many are right. If they get 17 right, then you say, okay, they know how to multiply. Now, the standards say deeper understanding and less volume. So we only give them 10 questions, and they are to use 3 different methods to solve each problem and write a paragraph. And what we have seen where the Common Core tests are in place, New York, for example, the grade is if the child uses 3 methods and write a paragraph and gets the wrong answer, they're still considered proficient in multiplication. If the child uses 1 algorithm and gets every question correct, they are marked as not proficient in multiplication. And that is just one example of the insidious nature of the writing of the standards. The geometry, they totally rewrote the geometry so that you have to teach using this transformational geometry, which none of the standard curriculum would apply. So everybody had to buy new books that were Common Core aligned. So now you introduce cost, you introduce complexity, and you have no evidence that the kids are going to learn what they need to learn. So the person who wants to play a game with you of words, who says it's standards, not curriculum, does not understand what those standards say and how the system of education works, because standards do not stand alone. It's integrated. Standards drive the assessment, which drives the curriculum. Okay. Other question? I got another question?
Hi. So I understand your point about high-stakes testing potentially being a problem. What do you use as an alternative to that? I mean, what do we do when we have a senior that's still not able to read? If you don't have high-stakes testing, how do you change that outcome?
Okay, so that's a really good question, and it's actually number 6 in the questions that we're struggling with for the answer that will be the freedom to learn answer. I'll give you my answer because we haven't had this conversation yet. My answer is it's the parent's responsibility to hold the school accountable. And we have seen this. Dearborn Heights right now has a lawsuit against their school district. It's a whole big group of parents because their students were given their high school diplomas and they can't read at the 8th grade level. And so they are suing for breach of contract. And they are making progress through the courts. And they're suing their school board and the Michigan Board of Education. Rightly so. But it's the parents holding the school accountable. So if, as a parent, if I see that my kid is not learning, that's where the marketplace comes in. I have to find an alternative. Now, when I was on Portage School Board, we had a mom come to the board and say, my first son failed math every year through middle school, and I told you people, don't move him ahead, he doesn't know it, and I can't teach him. Now he's still failing in high school, and my second son is failing. And the answer to us as a board was, this is not a board level issue. And so we were told to ignore it, that the superintendent would deal with it. Well, of course, being the big mouth that I was, I wouldn't let that go like that. But that was a parent holding us accountable. And so she has to have alternatives. She has to have the mechanisms of how, if this is not working for my kid, I have to have another choice. So coming to the board was one way. What was her next option? And that's what we don't have. A lot of communities don't have a second place for parents to take their kids instead. So I think it's a combination of you take all the controls away from the federal and the state level, you put it right in the parents' hands, and you make sure you have an open marketplace where parents have alternatives when their kids' needs aren't being met. But we have to get more people comfortable with that idea. That's where we want to be headed for freedom to learn. Okay, so of these first 4, does anybody else have another comment or question about them? Yes, we have one more here.
I'm an old man here, and my kids are long gone out of school. I don't really think I really need that.
Okay. We're recording it for posterity.
Yeah. I always have made the statement, my kids graduating from high school, mine were from Imlay City. I had a better 8th grade education out of Detroit public schools than my kids had graduating. I've watched over the years a deterioration of the public school system and even the parochial school systems in this state. Whenever anything new comes up, you always hear the extremes from both sides, from the right, from the left. One of the things I've been hearing, back up a second. When I tried to question things that were being done in schools, I was basically told, who do you think you are telling us how to teach? Everything I've heard from Common Core, parents are absolutely excluded from the rights to even criticize. Am I right? Or is that something that is part of it?
When Michael Cohen, the president of Achieve, came to Michigan to testify to the special House Committee on Common Core, one of the representatives asked him, he says, I'm college educated. My daughters are bringing home math homework I don't recognize and I can't help them with. And Michael Cohen's first answer was, well, sometimes kids need tutors. And the representative looked at him and he said, wait, you did hear that I have a college degree and my daughters are in elementary school, didn't you? And he said, Common Core standards were not written with parents in mind. Now, okay, so you can say it was innocently written without parents in mind because they think it's a better way to teach kids. You can say that some people believe that. I personally don't believe that. I believe there is an intentional, this is part of the progressive infiltration into education that is intentionally separating parents and children, that is intentionally trying to make parents look stupid and teachers look smart, and so that the children move their allegiance from the family to the school. And it's just one of the, why else would you really do that? Why would you claim that you want to have parents involved to help the kids, and yet then you change everything you're doing so that the parents can't? It doesn't make any sense. So yes, it's absolutely true. They don't want parents involved. Which is why this first line here is so important, that the best educational curriculum has active support of local parents and teachers, that if parents are coming and complaining, then the school board, they have to change it. They have to respond. That's what this is asking for. That's the kind of accountability that we're looking for. All right, so show of hands. Number one, who in here likes the idea of number one, best educational standards with parents and teachers? Okay. It looks good. Anybody opposed? Okay. Okay, number two, standards and curriculum should be evidence-based. Agree? Anybody disagree? Okay. You're allowed. Okay, high-stakes testing is bad for kids and teachers and should be eliminated. Agree? Okay, so this one's a little more mixed. Disagree? And is it right that we're concerned about accountability? Okay, okay. Okay. A robust education is the coexistence of strong public and private schools. Agree? Disagree? Okay. Okay, so that's good because that accountability issue does come up later. Okay, so the next three items I want to bring up are, we got some general support, but there's some more discussion needed. The first, saying the basis for freedom to learn should be constitutional. It's very clear that our federal constitution has the right and responsibility of education to the states. That's constitutional. In the Michigan Constitution, it says parents have the ultimate authority for the education of their children. So to me, those would be the key pivotal points, that, you know, teachers are professional advisories, but the ultimate responsibility is with the parents. Now, I don't know if you've gotten involved in this vaccination debate, but you know, the argument is that some parents make bad choices for their kids and we have to protect them from themselves. Well, yes, in a free society, some people make bad choices, but a free society gives them the right to make bad choices. And if you don't want your kids to get measles, then you get them vaccinated, for example, okay? So if you want to let people teach your children for you, then you can do that. If you want to provide oversight to your children, then you should be able to. Now, bottom line for me on this one, which we're getting some interesting discussion across the country, you know, education right now is compulsory and nearly a monopoly. And with Common Core, it being pushed into the charter schools and into the Catholic schools or Christian schools, it is a monopoly. And so when you have a compulsory monopoly, that is not constitutional in the United States. Now, some people panic when I say schools should not be compulsory. You know? Well, some parents won't send their kids to school. Well, you know, those very parents that you're probably worried about probably will send their kids to school because they want the babysitting service. I mean, if you're going to badmouth parents, you know, right? But most parents want their kids to be educated. And if they think the best way to get them educated is to send them to school, they'll send them to school. That our freedoms need to be respected, and we shouldn't have compulsory school, especially in a monopolistic environment. Okay, so number 2, parents have the ultimate authority in the education of their children, which is what I talked about a little bit. Another really important point is the purpose of formal education. It has always been to prepare children to become informed citizens. But the new 21st century of purpose of education is to create a skilled workforce. Now, I am pretty sure that nobody imagined informed citizens were going to be unemployable. I'm pretty sure that the whole point of education in creating informed citizens is bigger than employability. It's also surprising to me that people think that if we look at the job market today and push those skills into the school, that that's going to prepare kids for what we don't know is coming. So that they say that in terms of critical thinking, but they don't mean it in terms of application. So this purpose of education is a really big key point to pay attention to understand where people are coming from. So the question that I'm asking you is your perception about the purpose of education and the difference between the concept of informed citizen and compliant, skilled workforce. Okay, so now I'm going to take another break and see if you have questions about these 3 items or comments. Nobody has any comments about the skilled workforce? Yes. Here. Oh, we have. Oh, you got. Okay, they got the mic back. It will come to you.
My name is Millie Sell, and on the basis for freedom to learn should be constitutional. I'm not sure that we should even be discussing that there should be a freedom to learn, because the rights that are not delegated in our Constitution belong to the people, and they're already listed in the Bill of Rights. And so when we start talking about a freedom to learn, we're already abdicating some of our rights just by doing that.
You know,
and yes, we have a freedom to learn because we live here in the United States of America. We've enjoyed all this freedom all these past years, and now suddenly they're putting restrictions on everything. We're constantly seeing restrictions, and we're seeing redefinitions of words to the point where people don't understand what's being spoken even in some cases because we don't know what the words mean. So to even discuss freedom to learn is insulting in my mind.
That's a really good point, because I argue that a lot. That, like, for example, in Michigan, the Michigan Constitution gives parents the ultimate authority on the rearing and educating of their children. If we pass a parental rights amendment in Michigan, that is what you're saying. That it is clarifying and possibly taking away the rights that we have intrinsically because it's already in our Constitution and protects us. So it's a very good point. The problem I have is, as a advocacy leader, how I communicate effectively, what words I use to express what I'm trying to explain. So I'm going to struggle with your point for a little while, and I'm going to think about it because that's really important. And I appreciate you bringing that up. Yes.
The third point, the purpose of a formal education is to prepare children to be informed citizens. I had a fellow that I worked with one time, and he felt that he had the right to decide to be a philosopher. And he might have been a very informed citizen, but he wanted me to support him when he was a philosopher. So I think if you want to say that they just need to be informed citizens, I think you need to define informed citizen. Maybe informed productive citizens, something, but you can be informed and not be very productive or contributing.
Very good. That's a good clarification. Thank you very much. Right now, there's a big debate about, we went through a period in Michigan where we wanted every high school student to take the same courses so that they were prepared to go to college. So, right, we were pushing everybody through Algebra 2, for example. Now, personally, as a math person, I believe if you teach kids math well from kindergarten through 8th grade, they can learn Algebra 2. Now, the question about whether they have to or not, that's where the whole compulsory comes into play. And so now the pendulum is swinging back to the vocational ed, or, it's got new words, whatever. But the idea of letting kids take not Algebra 2, but, small engine repair or graphics or whatever. And I will say, I have that in my family. My nephew was in high school in the 80s, and he was told by his school he couldn't take college English and small engine repair, even though the school offered both, because he had to choose. He was either on the college-bound track or he was on the vocational track, and near the twain shall meet. And, which is a really absurd statement as well. So I think the point is really important in this level of responsibility, of productivity, and what kids are required to learn versus what they are allowed to choose to learn. So I think your point about informed, productive citizen, and then getting back to the point about less compulsion and more opportunity, that'd be good. Thank you.
I have one right here, Melanie.
Oh, good.
Yeah, my name's Becky Foster, and I was thinking about that third point about the formal education is to prepare children to be informed citizens, and the trend appears to be to just make sure that they can get a job. And when you're talking about progressive education and about the elites kind of pushing things so that they can take care of us, they can take care of it all. So these kids are going to go and they're going to be really good at video games, and they're going to be really good at all this high-tech stuff. But when we have a presidential debate, which sometimes isn't pleasant to watch, but whatever, they aren't going to really follow that because that's not where the zip is. So I think this is a really important point. I think a productive, informed citizen is probably also a really important point. Parents who have children still living home with them for 40 years would probably agree. But I kind of see that, what you're trying to say there.
So there's a standard that says they're trying to teach kids critical thinking and using data to make decisions, okay, and to form opinions. So the way they test this and teach this is they give the student a paragraph to read, and then they give them questions to answer about the paragraph. And the student has to use the information in the paragraph to answer the questions. So they are not allowed to bring in knowledge from any other source, because how could you grade that test if you let kids bring in stuff that you didn't tell them? So we're teaching them to think. They're thinking critically. When somebody gives you, there are global warming examples. Rand Paul brought up the ones about Ronald Reagan. The point is they form the whole structure of the data and the information there to have the conclusion they want. And the kids are thinking they're critical thinkers because they can read this paragraph and pull out the data and get the right answer. But it's not the right answer. It's a wrong answer. It's only right because that's what it says. So the point you're making is really important and very subtle. They have perverted the concept of critical thinking. It is not really learning all you can learn and asking good questions about it. It's about being able to think about what I tell you so that you give me the answer I want when we're done. So that's really quite worrisome. And I do worry that that is part of the skilled workforce, a skilled compliant workforce. Okay, another.
There are a couple here.
Hi.
Hi.
I got my teaching degree when I was 47, and I had actually, it's a goofy story, but I had actually taught for a private school prior to getting my bachelor's degree. I am now a certified teacher, but I have the part where it says that the children should have a freedom to learn. What I'm finding over the years, in the private school it was a whole lot different. In the public schools, when I have subbed, and I finally quit doing that this year actually, what I have found is that so many children are being robbed of the freedom to learn because of, honestly, most of you have probably, I don't know how many of you teach or are in class, that get the opportunity to watch classrooms that are actually being conducted, but there is so much time spent trying to calm down children, trying to manage children so that they're not fighting with each other, they're not harassing each other, they're not throwing shoes at the teacher, that type of thing. I mean, it's really out of control. And I know that's not really what the meeting is about, but I don't think a lot of parents realize how much their children are being robbed of their freedom of education because so much time is spent trying to use discipline in the classroom.
Well,
and the discipline has gotten to the point where there really is none to speak of.
The concept of mainstreaming, where we took kids with special needs and put them in the regular classrooms, was built on a social structure that suggested that would reduce their feelings of being different and so forth. But a lot of times, the practical classroom, the teacher's ability to manage even 2 children who have emotional instability of some sort, and then having 20 other kids in the classroom, it's really unreasonable. And so a lot of it's another idea that sounded good, but in practice is extremely difficult to execute, and results in a lot of children getting shortchanged in their educational opportunities. Thank you very much. That's an excellent point. Another.
I actually have more of a comment, I guess, than a question. I appreciate your struggle over answering this lady's question. I also believe that words are important, and the definitions of words that you use are important. And although I have a son in high school, I've been a homeschooler for 19 years, and so the public school to me is a tool in my toolbox to educate my children. But it's a common phrase in the homeschool world that the purpose of education, and they know that the public schools their purpose of education is employability. The homeschool world, the purpose of education is for our children to be the employers and to be the leaders of the next generation. And I have had many conversations with my children just at the dining room table about how someday they will be the leader in their community. And I've had my children sometimes say, what if I don't want to be a leader? And my answer is, you will when you're older and you see the world around you. And so I think words are important. And I see on your paper it says freedom to learn, a nonpartisan vision for Michigan. I guess my question, I was wondering if this has any legs for a national movement. And I really think just saying that over and over again, the purpose of education is for our children to be employers and leaders. My children just understand that because they've heard it. And so if that could be part of the discussion and part of the phrasing.
Yeah. I really like that because think about it, even when you work in corporate America can be ruthless and you end up on the streets, maybe you get a severance package, but when they have to cut back, you never know. And it doesn't mean you're a bad person. If you don't have in your heart the belief that you can be your own leader, meaning an entrepreneur, which is the most incredible strength of the United States. There is a Chinese professor, he's an American citizen now, who is very much opposed to us copying the Chinese education system. He said anybody can teach a bunch of kids to do, like, remember when the Olympics were in China and all those people did exactly the same thing at the same time? I was like, oh, geez, that's insane. That's not the American way. You know, it was more likely that we would all be standing there dancing and everybody do their own thing. That is really good wording for creating and reinforcing that image that every one of our children should have the spirit and the knowledge that they can be the leader of themselves, take care of themselves, be an entrepreneur, find a way, and then when you do that, typically you'll find others who will want to be with you, follow, or work side by side, however you say that. So I really like that. That's an excellent suggestion. Okay, yes, I am one of the team members of Stop Common Core in Michigan, but our team is networked to other teams in other states. I think we've got pretty much every other state on there. We work through the group called Truth in American Education. If you're interested in following what's happening nationally on this battle, that's a good website, Truth in American Education. TAE posts on Twitter too, they're very good. And I will talk a little bit more about what we do, but one of the things that we do is share things that work and things that don't work. So, we try to learn from each other about phrasing, legislation, tactics in communicating with parents. And so, yes, we will be sharing this with the group because I do believe that, when you find the right words and the right message, that people will jump on it and come with us. And since this is grassroots, it's going to need a lot of people to work to get there. So, great, thank you.
Any more, Melanie?
Pardon me?
I have one more.
Great.
On this one about the purpose of formal education is to prepare children to be informed citizens, I suggest that the purpose of formal education is to inspire children to want to learn. I think that is most important because when you have children in a classroom that want to learn, they're not going to be fidgeting around and just messing around and not wanting to do anything. They will either be listening to the teacher or they will be going ahead of the teacher in their book. And I think that's most important, inspiring the children to want to learn.
Excellent, excellent. Thank you very much. I appreciate all your comments. So the next 4 items that are on here are things that we have open questions about, and I'll just tell you sort of what we're thinking about on these, and then I want to close with our action items, and I will hang around so that you can talk to me some more, because I really wanted to use this kind of opportunity to hear from you as much as for you to hear from me. First one, number 4, should private and homeschool parents have access to state funding for education? I told you I'm on this national network. We have not found a legislative way to make these funds follow the student without strings. And so that is our goal. Now, in Michigan, there are legislators who want to do money follow the child before we figure this out. And it is another one of those tentacles that once you get it and you start it off wrong, it's going to be harder to fix. And my preference is to say, take the tax money out of the schools. You don't give schools increased money for declining enrollment. That is contradictory to the whole market concept. You don't have escalating funds to schools as the state population of school-aged children is declining. I mean, there just is no reason. So when you bring that funding back in line, and then you give it all back to the taxpayers, i.e. you don't take it in the first place or spend it on the roads where you should have been spending it or things like that. And then I don't need you to give me money back for my kid to go to school because I'm not paying confiscatory taxes anymore. So to me, that's the bigger correct solution, but that's harder to get to. I will talk a little bit more about that. But in the meantime, be wary of legislation that advocates for money following the child. But how we solve this is ongoing conversation. Number 5, the role of K-12 education in job preparation. We talked a little bit about that, but the governor is having a commission. It's pretty funny. My husband's company got invited to participate in this. This is a business people's commission on what they want out of education, and they asked me to go be their representative. So I'm going to go, as long as they don't figure out who I am before I get there. And, but the point is, public education is not supposed to be training ground for businesses. I mean, the old model was, you know, businesses had internships or apprenticeship programs, and they hired you and they trained you. They didn't go to the public school system or the public universities and say, well, here's the list of things I want my people to know before they come so that I can hire them right in here and they hit the ground running. Now, there is benefit to having balance between the two, but when you make that shift, then education becomes not driven by the parents at all, driven by the business community, which really, it's easily led into that crony capitalism kind of positioning. But we still need to do some conversation about that. Number 6 is really important, the accountability and who controls the terms. That's really, when you think about what does accountability look like and who controls the terms. So we'll continue that conversation. I have my email down here and my phone, so I want to encourage all of you, if you think about more things, to please contact me. And then how do we remove Common Core from Michigan and what replaces it? And we do have some really good legislation we're working on right now from Ohio. And it's great actually. It was led the way by Indiana, whose whole thing fell apart because the governor screwed it up. Followed by Oklahoma, which is actually trying to do a pretty good job, but they've found a few flaws in theirs. And now Ohio's doing it, so we're working from Ohio legislation to get ours. And before Common Core came in, when we had No Child Left Behind, every state had standards and curriculum and assessments and professional development. Some were better than others. One was outstanding. You know, Massachusetts? Outstanding. Best student achievement in the country, competed on international assessments, held up there. All levels of kids did better. The minority population didn't do as well as we'd hope. There's obviously some more work to do there, but you know, it was just outstanding. And you say, well, if you wanted to have the best standards, why wouldn't you pick up Massachusetts? And Dr. Sandra Stotsky has been to Michigan a couple times. She's on our national network. She has offered to help any state that wants to bring back those Massachusetts standards and assessments and help make that transition within a state. And when you compare what Michigan standards were before Common Core, we were actually closer to Massachusetts than we were to Common Core. So, okay, yes, it can be a pain for the teachers, you know, to have to regroup and go over, but it would be the right thing for kids. But then again, that's somebody else's standards, so you need a process that you let them become Michigan standards, but you need a process that doesn't let the progressives come in and take control of it and turn it all back around so that they're not good standards anymore. So we're still working on that. Okay, I want to close with our action items to get you up to speed on those. So number 1, I talked about opt-out. That is the most important thing we can be doing this spring, as we can make an impact. We only need 6% of kids in the state to opt out. 6% in a school is totally awesome, and it makes a real statistical negative impact. And that's what we want, because that's where we show our power as a grassroots. We're working with the Michigan legislators. I mentioned Stop Common Core in Michigan Facebook to keep current on where we are. I don't have any bill numbers yet to share, but Gary Glenn, Todd Corser, Cindy Gamrat, they're right there. Tom Hooker, who was an awesome ally last year, is continuing. So we're picking up the guys that were there last year. We don't have Tom McMillan there, but he's still on my email and phone, and he's helping us the best he can, so from the outside. So we're working on that. We'll keep you posted. But what we are working on in legislation right now is with the Heritage Foundation on the reauthorization for ESEA and No Child Left Behind. We're a little bit disappointed with where the Heritage Foundation is right now, or the Heritage Action Group. They have endorsed a bill, well, they started to endorse the bill. But it's right to the comment that you made about the freedom to learn words. The bill permits states to opt out of the federal directives. And it's got a list of requirements to be able to do that. Now, that means the assumption is the feds have the right to be having any of these restrictions at all. And so it's a little confusing because Heritage right now is pushing to sunset the Import-Export Bank. I don't know if you've heard about that, but they want the law just can go away and there will be no more Import-Export Bank and life will be better. They are actively working on total repeal of Obamacare. They think that there's a lot of political benefit to having these votes, even if you have to go back and do a little at a time, but getting it on the table, getting it passed, and then working the argument from that direction. So the TAE network that I'm on, we're recommending that they advocate the same thing. Sunset the ESEA NCLB law. Just completely it's expired, officially call it expired, reduce the funding to the Federal Department of Ed so that they have to reduce staffing so they don't have so many people there trying to figure out how to tell the rest of us how to educate our kids, and block grant all their money that's intended to go back to states, block grant it back to the states, no strings attached. Nobody has to opt out, nobody has to provide any proof of anything, and get the feds out of education completely. So that's what our preference is. If you talk to your congressman, that is what we would like to see happen. Now, I don't know if that's politically possible, but again, I don't think you get anywhere close to that conversation if you're not willing to keep putting it out there, And that another law that gives us permission to do what's constitutionally our right is problematic, seriously problematic. So if you can help us on that, we'd really appreciate it. I noted down at the bottom, I'm on Twitter. Bill Gates is following me on Twitter. Creepy. But Truth in American Education is also on Twitter, and if you follow them, you'll get some of the posts that we do as a group. You can use hashtags to give visibility, the Stop Common Core, the Sunset NCLB, Sunset ESEA, and FedEd. There's a group of teachers. They're called Badass Teachers. they're the rabble-rousers on the teacher side that are fighting the assessments, and I'm a little disappointed they didn't start soon enough to get the standards killed. I think that's their progressive mindset for a group, but even most teachers are beginning to realize that this is ridiculous and that this intervention is not good for them either. And so I think in the battle to recover our education system, we need to be in allegiance with the teachers that the grassroots is who needs to be leading education, not statists, whether at the federal level or the state level. Very good. I'll take any other questions after our break. Or, do we have time for any more? Do you want 4 more questions?
I think we have time, right?
Yep. Okay, I guess we have time. We'll take a couple more.
Here I am again. I took college prep classes in high school, but I went on to be skilled trades. I was going to question you on 3 until I read number 5. I think they belong together. Informed productive citizens, I think you can leave the productive. Informed citizens is one role. That's a completely separate topic of productive. People need to go, as I took my apprenticeship, you talked about in the past, you go to your apprenticeship and get your training. My preparation from college prep classes, or at least with a good high school education, made my apprenticeship much easier, much better. If I'd have gone to my apprenticeship without the education of reading, writing, ability to do math, and of course I took algebra and
Did you take geometry too?
Yeah. And that all helped me in my trade. I needed those skills. So those are not divested from their educational needs for other than college. You need that in a lot of your trades. They require advanced mathematics and a better ability to read because it's just necessary. Maybe in some trades it's not quite as critical, but I think 3 and 5 need to be together.
Okay.
The formal education needs to include the basic skills to function in this society. And just being informed does not make you a knowledgeable person. You need to be able to read. You need to be able to write well. You need to be able to do mathematics. Just being able to think isn't gonna cut it if you can't do the other skills in this day and age.
Very good, thank you. You know, one of the premier automotive mechanics schools is in Chicago. Requires kids to have Algebra 2, and if they took trigonometry in high school, that's a plus. And that's how much technology is in cars these days. So, you know, even being an auto mechanic, they want kids to know math. Okay.
Yes, thanks for being here, Melanie. And for everybody that's here, we're going to be putting up all the links and everything that she's got will be put up on the website. It'll probably be tomorrow, but we'll put everything up and out there. And I'll actually put an email out to everybody. So if you missed it or want to know where these links are, you know, or you lose the paper, these are things that you're going to want to follow up on. You're going to read and check out yourself. But a couple things. First of all, the freedom to learn, I like it because it's a freedom. I can choose to learn, or I can choose not to learn. The one thing that bothers me a little bit about all of this stuff is the responsibility. Yeah, we want people accountable. We want everybody to be accountable. But ultimately, our state constitution has a right on the money. It's up to us to make sure our children are educated. We may not know how to fix a car, but if the car breaks, we know where to take it. We know what resources to put into that car. Saying that you can say it with anything else. I had volunteered for a number of years with our local schools, working after-school tutoring programs from kindergarten right up through high school in our local schools here. Good people working together to make sure the kids learn. It doesn't have to be high tech, but on the whole accountability thing. One of the arguments for Common Core, and I hear people say a lot, well, your local school board still does have the opportunity. Now, maybe you can clear this with it, but it's my understanding, the standards are taught. In your teaching, you have to, you know, there are certain things that are required for the answers. You've got to teach to be able to get into that. But if you want to change that, or if the state of Michigan doesn't like something in there, we can only, at this point, we can petition to get something changed to the 20-some states. There's two groups within the country. But we can petition to have something changed. They don't have to agree to it. Is that?
Yeah, the Common Core standards are copyrighted, and so you have to petition and have that organization approve whatever changes you might want to make. Now, so Michigan took the standards, but our lawmakers did pass a resolution that said school boards could have other standards if they wanted. Here's the catch. You have to administer the state assessment, and your school and your teachers and your kids are going to be judged on that assessment, and the assessment's aligned to the standards. So it's very difficult for school boards to justify deviating, because what if the kids don't do well on the assessments? That's a risk, and we don't know. I will mention Hillsdale College. I mentioned them before. They have a model for classical charter school, classical public charter. They've been opened in other states. We've had 7 applications in Michigan be turned down multiple times, 7 different places in the state. And one of the rejection notices actually said there was too much Constitution in the curriculum. But so now I'm concerned that if we bring in the classical education in Michigan in a public school setting where they have to take the state assessment, that the kids won't do well on the test. The Hillsdale folks seem to think that the robust education in the classical, they'll be fine, but the examples that I give them, they don't have answers for. The question will be, how big a % of the questions are these absurd ones, and how much will the kids know and be able to figure out anyways? But it's not an issue for us because we haven't gotten a single one of these charters approved. And so, you know, people are talking about expanding charters and how, you know, I'm all for choice because we have charter schools in Michigan. Horse hacky. As long as the charter schools also have to go along with Common Core, there is no legitimate choice in the system. And the Great Lakes Education Project, which is Betsy DeVos's group, Grand Rapids, theoretically, conservative reform educators are not. They are in this for business. And I have proof of this. Their model is the Heritage Academy model. If you go online and you read it, you would never think that that model would buy into Common Core. And yet they were one of the biggest advocates for Common Core. And one of the guys accidentally told us the truth, that they're a national charter organization. If there's a common set of standards and common curriculum, they buy in bulk, they do their teacher professional development in bulk, and it saves them a lot of money. And I said, even if it's crap, and the kids don't learn better? Because the truth of the matter is, charters are a little bit better. And if you read research, you can justify a little bit better based on the fact that parents chose for their kids to be there, which means they are more engaged parents than in your average public school. So the evidence that charters are actually teaching kids better is pretty slim. And when you see that they're not just accommodating Common Core, they are in the legislature advocating it. So the charters in Michigan are not nearly where we need them to be. So we're going to work on the charter laws as well, but that's part of that bigger picture.
Hi, I had a question about point 4 here. Now, I've heard that the Michigan Constitution, prevents public funds going to, private schooling and stuff. So I was wondering if you had heard that, and if you could comment on that.
Well, so the workaround is considered tax credits. So, right, a parent, when they fill out their tax forms, they say where their kids went to school, and if they did not go to a public school, then they get a credit on their taxes. So the money is not, it's going to the parent, it's not going to the school. So that's how they would get around it. But in Louisiana, where this is where they've actually put this in place, the rules about how your tax return is reviewed, you have to have certain schools, and the schools have to meet certain criteria in order for you to get the tax credit. So they have this control feature in there so that it's not, if they don't want to allow, for example, this classical private academy on the list because they don't follow the progressive model, and that's the rules, then you won't get a tax credit for sending your kids there anyway. So it's still, even though it gets around the Constitution and that requirement, it doesn't get around the strings. They still figured out how to put the strings in. The Common Core standards were written by 5 people, none of whom were educators. Yeah, you can Google that one to get the names. Jason Zimba, Bill McCallum. I mean, 5 people, honest. And then they were friends of the Achieve organization, who was a primary driver behind this, and the Bill Gates Foundation. Bill Gates is big. He was voted one of the most respected man in the country today, or the world. I suppose I guess money counts, huh? But anyway, so yeah, and then they developed a process to give them credibility. But the process, so I mentioned Dr. Sandra Stotsky was invited to be part of this process because she has incredible reputation for what she did in Massachusetts. She was a key architect of their success. So they invited her to participate. Well, the way they did the meetings is you show up and they tell you things, and then you go home and write your comments, and you send your comments to a central place. And this person at this central place consolidated the comments. And Dr. Stotsky was getting a little suspicious when none of her comments ever appeared on this summary of comments. And so she called one of the other members of the committee to find out if their comments were on there. And lo and behold, all the criticisms that they didn't like, they just eliminated, because the process let them do that, because the people on the committee didn't get to talk to each other and compare. So then, at the end, when they published the agreements from the committee, at first They didn't, so Dr. Stotsky and a number of others did not approve. They said, no, I'm not signing off on these. And they just didn't publish their names and nothing about them, as if they were never on the committee. So then that group published a separate statement about why they didn't. But the key person in the English standards, Dr. Stotsky, and the key person, James Milgram, in math, refused to sign off on them because they said, these are bad standards. And that never, I mean, it took a while to make the light of day, and what is really confusing to me is how they were able to stamp that down so that people like, you know, Mike Huckabee and Jeb Bush never heard it, didn't believe it, were persuaded otherwise. I don't know.
Other questions?
Other questions? I do have a book. I think they're $10. I have 2 of them. Not too thick, but if somebody wants to read more about all of the background on Common Core, which I know I didn't go through today because I wanted to take you along on this new journey.
Can you take one more, Melanie?
Yeah.
Thanks.
I understand that one of the architects of Common Core is now in charge of the College Board,
Right.
which is redoing the SAT to also align with Common Core. It just seems to me there might be some element of a big business in this to make a lot of money.
Right, right. So they already redid ACT, and now they're redoing the SAT. And here's what's mind-boggling. Okay, so maybe most people don't know this, but the reason those tests were considered credible for college entrance is the years and years of evidence that if we ask kids these questions about math and they get them, a certain percentage of them right, those kids will go on and have an 80% probability of getting a B or better in the first college math course that's not remedial. This correlation, cause and effect, evidence that that worked. When you throw the test out and rewrite it completely and start from scratch, you have no evidence. You have no correlation. You have no way to prove that passing this test will have the kid be able to do anything when they get to school. So the Common Core people know this. And so what they've started is pressure on the universities to say that if a student comes to your college with a high school diploma from a college, from a Common Core agreed upon state school and the test, you will promise not to put them into a class called remedial. So even if the student enters and he can't do Algebra 1 and they have to put him in Algebra 1 and he wants to be an engineer, even if, they can't call it remedial. And so, I mean, this is, when we were having our campaign for the university regents, the number of people who were running for regents who didn't understand what was happening and why this was going to impact the universities. I mean, well, and so what do you say? Well, why do universities care? They don't care. So right now, the average in Michigan, or I think most engineering schools, to get an engineering degree, if you have a good diploma, it's 5 years. Its average student takes 5 years in college to get an engineering degree. With Common Core, it'll go to 6, maybe 7. Big deal. The university gets more money. Why would they care, right? So, you know, because I keep wondering, will they actually lower the requirements to become an engineer or to be pre-med? I can't see how that could happen, but I worry, you know, I worry. And if the kids didn't even learn geometry correctly, you know, what are they going to do about that? So this is quite a puzzle. We'll see. Well, hopefully we'll kill it before it becomes relevant. Go ahead.
She won't use a microphone, so.
No, just a comment. In the homeschool world, excuse me, there's concern about ACT and SAT. And because there are homeschoolers that are teaching their kids phonics and how to memorize multiplication tables and read good books, and they're afraid that they won't be able to pass the ACT and SAT. And so there's a movement now of homeschoolers who are taking a chunk of their school year and teaching them the real stuff, and then they spend a couple months of the year teaching them the Common Core stuff, so that they could, when they see it on a test, they would understand the craziness of the wording and be able to answer the question of
the way.
I really don't like that. I really don't like that. I understand it's a survival strategy. There's another one. There is a list of universities and colleges in the country who do not require the ACT or the SAT for entry. So I recommend parents look at that list and make sure there's not a single one of those that you could send your kids to first. That's the first way to, because they're not going to take a homeschooler and say, oh, you're probably not smart enough to be able to come to our school. Okay, but the other thing we're working on is trying to get a sponsor for a non-political or apolitical assessment, because that's where the truth of these bad education ideas comes out. If you have a good assessment that is non-biased, which was what we used to have with ACT and we used to have with NAEP and some of the others, and we pretty much don't have those anymore because they've all been, I mean, those people, they were very smart. They got into all the systems to be able to pull all this together, kind of all converged at the same time. So I prefer those accommodation strategies to that one. I really worry about that, but okay. Okay, good. Thank you very much. I appreciate your time, and I'll hang around for a bit.